the path of salvation.
Dear students, this session will cover some portions from Chapter 4 of our Catechism text. The session will focus on different kinds of temptations in life. In the next session, we'll look at ways and means to counter these temptations. Let us start with the definition of temptation itself. Temptation is an incitement to sin. A true Christian accepts God as his or her guide and lives according to the Word of God and the teachings of the Church. Yet, we Christians also live in a world that is full of evil and temptations. The devil tempts us by our senses. Let me be very clear from the beginning. Getting tempted in itself is not a sin. However, giving into temptation is a sin. God has created each one of us as beings with free will. We are free to take decisions independently. Therefore, God allows temptations in our life. He respects our free will. The final choice of resisting a temptation or yielding to it is left to us. Temptation is also a mechanism for testing us. But at the same time, God also wills that we overcome these temptations and lead a life that is pleasing to Him. He wants us to pass the test rather than fail Him. When we undergo temptations, we realize the frailty of our human wills. We learn to rely increasingly on God and His Word for strength to overcome these temptations. The greater the temptation, the greater is the merit you earn in overcoming them. We begin with the greed for money. Well, wealth is a necessity in life. Without it, it's very difficult to live in this world. Acquiring wealth is not a sin. The question is, how much money does one need? If our lives can be compared to a motor car, money can be compared to gasoline or petrol. Gasoline is needed to run a car, but that's about it. A greedy person can be compared to someone driving around, stopping at each gas station on the way just to stock up fuel. At some point, his car has no space left for himself or his fellow passengers. You see, in his craze for stockpiling gasoline, he has forgotten the purpose of owning a car. Similarly, one who runs blindly after the riches of this world forgets the very purpose of life. But when exactly does money making become sinful? The answer depends on how the wealth was acquired. Many years back, the price of onions in India shot up the roof, so much so that onions became costlier than apples. Without warning, this humble household staple was suddenly out of reach of the poor. Why did this happen? This happened mainly because, following heavy rains that wiped out most of the standing crop in the fields, middlemen and wholesalers cornered all the available stocks of onion. They then created an artificial scarcity in the market and later traded the onions at inflated prices. In effect, such a person was holding on to goods which were meant for his neighbor. Hence, it is a violation of the 10th commandment. Many a time, workers are not paid their wages in full, the wages that were promised to them at the time of hire. Such an employer is effectively robbing his workers of their rightful wages. Again, this is a violation of the 7th commandment, thou shalt not steal. When a person does not work despite drawing fair wages, he or she commits a sin that falls into the same category. Earning wealth becomes a sin when money is earned by such immoral means. It also becomes a sin when priority for earning money replaces the prominence given to God in our lives. A common example of this would be skipping the Holy Mass on Sundays to keep one's establishment open throughout the day for business. Greed is a cardinal sin and a form of idolatry. If money comes between you and God, it becomes an idol for you. This is a violation of the first commandment. Remember this, violation of the first commandment. St. Paul, in his first epistle to Timothy, rightly calls the love of money the root of all evils. The second verse of chapter 28 of Ezekiel talks about Satan thus, the heart is lifted up and thou hast said, I am God. Here Satan in his vainglory, mistakenly thought that he is God, or rather, he thought that he is better than God, God who created him in the first place. In his folly, Satan did not realize that all his beauty, his perfection, and his grandeur originated from God himself. Remember this: true glory is the effect of honor and praise, and as such, it belongs to God alone. Vainglory, on the other hand, is a vice that stems from the sin of pride. Vainglory can manifest as inordinate self-esteem in a person. In such cases, it is also a personality defect. Vainglorious people wrongly believe that all their achievements are a result of their own efforts and capabilities. This results in insubordination, boastfulness, hypocrisy, contentiousness, and discord. There is no virtue in doing good deeds for the sake of human glory. Vainglory has also led to disastrous wars and conflicts between nations. A good example of this is the Cold War between the erstwhile Soviet Union and the United States of America, where both sides refused to budge. Vainglory ultimately leads to the fall of the individual, as it led to the fall of Satan. From a beautiful seraph, a being of the highest angelic order, Lucifer got deformed into a hideous creature full of evil and malice. The devil, or Satan as we know him today. The current socio-economic order promotes consumption in ever-increasing magnitude. Slick AdWords and clever marketing entice people to buy stuff 24/7. They entice us to buy things more and more in increasing quantities. We are constantly lured into buying things that we don't really need. Consumerism is an immoderate love of possessing goods or an uncontrolled urge to consume, leading to what we know today as the culture of excess. A Greek philosopher once said, "I think, therefore I exist." Instead, the consumerist says, "I shop, therefore I exist." My social status gets determined by what I have. This is detrimental to human dignity. Since our dignity stems from the fact that we are children of God, created in His own image and likeness, it shouldn't be based on what we can afford or possess. Not possessing the latest model of a gadget makes you feel inferior to a friend who has one. In a consumerist society, others become rivals and reminders of our perceived inadequacy to consume. One becomes jealous of the possessions of others, and this leads to the capital sin of envy. Consumerism serves as an ineffective means to fill the emptiness of the modern self. God is absent in the modern soul, and the individual tries to fill up this void in vain with things that money can buy. But this only provides an instant gratification that is short-lived. The more one possesses, the more does one yearn. Excess consumption is also dangerous to the environment. The model of Christian leadership is quite different from that of this world. A true Christian will neither lord over his people nor tyrannize them. Instead, he will serve the people just as Christ served his disciples. The Good Shepherd gives up his life to protect his sheep. God has given certain individuals a share in his authority and power to serve as leaders over people. When such leaders use this power for personal gain, the situation becomes dangerous. This leads to abuse of power by those in positions of authority. Authority becomes an end in itself rather than a means to serve. This lust for power has given rise to brutal dictators like Hitler, Mussolini, Stalin, Mao Zedong, and many others who rose to power under the guise of nationalism, equality, or social justice, but were ultimately responsible for the worst atrocities in human history. Healthy competition brings out the best in everyone. It helps us discover our latent talents and can boost our self-esteem. If the contest is fair, it helps one evaluate one's own capabilities vis-a-vis others and make the necessary improvements. Unhealthy competition, on the other hand, can lead to envy, hypocrisy, conflict, and can even result in death. Cain started competing in vain with Abel to get his sacrifices accepted by God. He ended up murdering his own brother out of jealousy. When competition becomes unhealthy, everyone else in the game becomes an enemy. Any unfair means employed to come out on top gets justified. Let me start with the saga of a brilliant girl who worked her way through school and college by dint of hard work. She passed out with flying colors. Later, she applied to an institution of great repute abroad. She got an admission to a graduate course and did well in her studies. Subsequently, she applied for research at the same institution. Her application was accepted. However, this girl misappropriated data and material from some other research done by somebody else outside for her doctoral dissertation. She fudged the data and she was confident that she had covered her tracks. At that time, nobody noticed and she was awarded a doctorate by the same institution. We will talk about the fate of this girl in the next session. Prodigality is the excessive use of resources, especially money. God-given resources are a gift to entire humanity, and our future generations also have a claim over them. We are stewards rather than owners of this planet. Prodigality is also exhibited in the society through lavish public celebrations and festivities. Misuse of money leads to all kinds of social problems. Pope Francis describes opulence as the sin of incoherence between life and faith. If you have a craze for luxuries in life, the way you live will be incompatible with the faith that you came to profess. Misuse of money leads to all kinds of social problems. Pope Francis describes opulence as the sin of incoherence between life and faith. If you have a craze for luxuries in life, the way you live will be incompatible with the faith that you claim to profess. This craze is also fueled by the influence of mass media and advertising. Arbitrary changes in contemporary fashion trends and styles can make apparel or accessories obsolete within days. All this is immoral and a threat to social justice in a world sharply divided between the haves and the have-nots. Woe to you that are full, for you shall hunger. Luke chapter 6 verse 25. Let us conclude this session now. We will cover the rest of the chapter in the next session. Thank you.